My name is Dorothy, and I never imagined the sharpest knives in my life would come not from enemies, but from my own parents. Friends can betray you, lovers can cheat you. But when it is your own mother and father who strip away your dignity, the wound is colder, heavier, harder to forget. That night began like so many others at their grand house, a place I had never truly called home. The dining room gleamed with chandeliers that scattered golden light across a table set with silver cutlery and crystal glasses. The air carried the scent of roasted meat, imported wine, and wealth so thick it pressed down on me. My father, always the host, had invited neighbors, his former business partners, even a couple of distant cousins who owed him favors. He loved an audience. He thrived on being admired. My mother sat poised at his side, pearls strung across her throat like trophies she never had to earn. She carried herself with the kind of elegance that was meant to remind everyone else of what they lacked. And then there was me, seated halfway down the table, clutching my napkin and forcing smiles, wondering why I still kept showing up to these dinners when I knew how they always ended. I had brought dessert. Not a bakery masterpiece, not a bottle of imported champagne. Just a tray of cookies I had baked myself the night before in my small kitchen. The chocolate chips had been bought with coupons I had carefully collected for weeks, newspaper cuttings, digital vouchers, scraps that most people would crumple and throw away. To me, those scraps meant survival. Each dollar saved was a brick in the foundation of a dream I was quietly building. A dream no one at that table cared to understand. At first, my mother smiled as I placed the tray in the center. But then she picked up one of the cookies with 2 manicured fingers, as if it were an artifact pulled from the ground. She tilted her head, and the smile twisted into laughter, sharp, brittle, cruel. "Oh, Dorothy," she said loudly enough for every guest to hear. "Still with your little coupons? Still pretending scraps of paper make you clever? Imagine a grown woman clipping like beggars." The table erupted in laughter. My father leaned back in his chair, raising his glass as if to toast the insult. "One day you will learn, Dorothy. Real success does not come from cheap tricks. Comes from knowing your place. And your place, my dear, is not at this table." Their words hit me like stones. My cheeks burned. My throat tightened. Around me the guests smirked or chuckled politely, eager to align themselves with the powerful hosts. No one defended me. Their eyes slid over me like I was nothing more than the punchline to a cruel joke. But that was not the first time. I remembered the birthdays where my gifts were dismissed as cheap. I remembered the Christmas where I handed my mother a scarf I had knitted myself, only to watch her toss it aside for a designer label she unwrapped minutes later. I remembered my father calling me small-minded, when I proudly told him how much I had saved by budgeting my groceries. Each memory was another weight pressing down on me, telling me that to them, I would never be enough. I forced myself to smile that night, though my hands shook beneath the tablecloth. I laughed weakly when others laughed, though my heart cracked with every sound. Inside, however, something shifted. Their cruelty, sharpened in front of an audience, no longer felt like words I had to swallow. It felt like a match striking flint. I looked at the cookies I had baked, at the coupons folded neatly in my purse, at the crumbs scattering across the polished table. They thought those scraps proved weakness. They thought frugality meant failure. They thought I would forever sit there in silence, absorbing their contempt. They were wrong. When the evening ended, when the guests drifted home and the laughter still echoed in my skull, I returned to my tiny apartment. I set the empty tray on the counter, washed each dish slowly, methodically, as if scrubbing away the shame. Then I sat at the kitchen table with the pile of coupons I had clipped that week. I stared at them through tears until the blur cleared, and I made myself a promise. One day I would turn these scraps of paper into something bigger than they could imagine. One day I would make their laughter choke in their throats. They would see my name not as the child who never measured up, but as the woman who built an empire from the very thing they mocked. And when the world recognized me, when my face appeared on the Forbes list, they would finally understand what they had done. I would not waste breath arguing with them. I would not confront them in anger. They would only twist into more ridicule. I would let silence harden into strength. I would let my work speak for me. And when the time came, I would let the evidence of my success silence their cruelty louder than any words I could ever say. Because while they laughed over cookies and coupons, I began building the empire that would one day put me on the Forbes list. And when my parents saw my face there, Their humiliation would be louder than any laughter they had ever thrown at me. The morning after that dinner, I woke with swollen eyes. I had cried myself to sleep, but when the sunlight poured into my tiny apartment, I promised myself I would not cry again. Not for them. Not for people who should have loved me but chose instead to make me the center of their ridicule. I tried to brush it off to focus on work. My job at the small marketing firm was not glamorous, but it was mine. I showed up every day, organized campaigns, built budgets, and handled clients who barely noticed my name but relied on my effort. It wasn't wealth, not yet, but it was a foundation. Still, humiliation travels with you. At lunch, I overheard two of my coworkers whispering, "Did you hear about Dorothy? Her parents always joke about her coupons." They laughed softly, unaware I was just around the corner. My father's booming voice, my mother's brittle laugh, had escaped the dining room and seeped into the world beyond. They had taken my dignity and spread it like gossip. That night I called my mother. I didn't even know why. Perhaps I still hoped she would soften. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady, "do you know how much it hurt when you mocked me? When Dad called me out like that in front of everyone?" Her laugh rang down the line, the same brittle sound I'd grown up with. "Oh, Dorothy, you're too sensitive. We were only joking." Everyone laughed. "Don't you understand humor?" "It wasn't humor," I whispered. "It was cruelty." But she had already moved on, chattering about a luncheon she was attending, about a necklace she had seen in a boutique. She did not hear me, or she chose not to. To her, my pain was invisible, my words forgettable. 2 days later, my father called. "Dorothy, you need to stop embarrassing us," he said flatly. "Coupons, secondhand clothes, that ridiculous little job of yours, people talk. You are dragging down the family name." "The family name?" I repeated, heat rising in my chest. "What about me? What about the daughter you keep humiliating?" "Stop being dramatic," he snapped. "If you want to be taken seriously, marry someone successful. That's your best chance. Otherwise, stay quiet and let us handle the business of reputation." That was the moment the final thread broke. They did not see me as a daughter. They saw me as an inconvenience, a stain they had to scrub away with laughter. That evening, I sat alone at my kitchen table again. The coupons spread before me like puzzle pieces. I stared at them, at their numbers and barcodes, and thought about every insult, every smirk, every time my parents dismissed me as small. And I knew I would never beg for their approval again. I would build my own name, my own fortune, my own empire. Not to prove them wrong, because proving them wrong was too small. I would build it to prove myself right. I opened my laptop and stared at the blank document. The cursor blinked, steady, waiting. I began typing the plan I had carried in pieces for months. How I would turn thrift into strategy. How I would launch the platform I had been dreaming of. A digital service teaching others how to save, invest, and grow from scraps the world ignored. Every word I typed was a brick. Every sentence a stone. And with each one I felt stronger. That night, the echo of my father's words, "Marry someone successful or stay quiet," rang in my ears. I whispered back to the empty room, "No, I will become successful, and you will stay quiet." Because what began as a pile of coupons on my table would soon grow into the blueprint of an empire. And the day would come when my parents and the world would see my name on the Forbes list. The days after that phone call felt different. I was no longer just a daughter aching for her parents' approval. I was an observer, collecting details like a detective at a crime scene. Every insult, every careless remark, every moment of condescension became data. I had spent years swallowing their cruelty, now I would document it. The first step was memory. I pulled out a spiral notebook and began writing down every instance I could recall. My father's words at that dinner table, "Your place is not at this table." My mother's mocking tone, "Coupons are for beggars." Birthdays, holidays, moments when my efforts were dismissed or laughed at. I wrote them all, page after page, until the notebook felt heavier in my hands. Then came the present. At work, I overheard a coworker repeat one of my father's jokes about me. That meant they had been talking outside the family, spreading stories of my supposed smallness. I wrote it down. I asked careful questions in casual conversations, feigning curiosity, and learned how often my parents turned me into a punchline. The list grew. But humiliation was only part of the story. I wanted more than to expose their cruelty. I wanted to transform it into strength. So while I recorded their words, I also gathered something else, tools. At night, after work, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by coupons. To anyone else they were scraps of paper, but to me they were symbols. I began cataloging them in spreadsheets, dates, discounts, savings. I tracked every dollar I saved, every item I bought below retail. I created charts showing the percentage of income one stretched, how much further I could go than others who mocked me. It started small, but it grew into something undeniable. I realized I was not just surviving. I was designing a system. And systems can be shared. I began writing guides. How to save $200 a month on groceries. Turning coupons into investment capital. 5 steps to stretch a paycheck. These weren't just notes. They were blueprints for an audience I had not yet reached, but one I knew existed. People like me. People dismissed, overlooked, told they were small. Each night I built. Each morning I endured my parents' coldness. They called occasionally, always with the same tone. My mother sneering. Still working that little job? My father sighing. You need to face reality, Dorothy. I kept my voice calm, polite, letting them believe I was still the daughter they could step on. But afterward I wrote everything down. Their words were becoming evidence. Then came the moment that cemented my resolve. At a family gathering weeks later, my father stood in front of cousins and neighbors, swirling his wine. Dorothy thinks she is clever with her coupons, he said, his voice booming. But the truth is, she will never rise above scraps. Some of us are born for success. Others, well, they are born to clip. The room erupted in laughter. My mother patted his arm, smiling. I forced a smile too, but inside fire roared. I excused myself to the restroom and pulled out my phone. I recorded a voice memo. His words, the laughter, the sound of humiliation turned public. My hands shook, but not from shame, this time from certainty. This would not just be memory. This would be proof. From then on, I recorded whenever I could, snippets of phone calls, conversations, casual remarks. I saved voicemails where my mother criticized my choices. I cataloged every bit of it in a hidden folder on my laptop, labeling them with dates and context. Not because I planned to sue them, but because one day when my success stood undeniable, I wanted the world to hear what I had overcome. Meanwhile, my guides and spreadsheets became drafts of something bigger. I started building a simple website late at night, teaching others how to replicate my system. It was not sleek or polished yet, but it was real. For every cruel remark my parents threw at me, I added another article, another tool, another strategy. Humiliation was fuel. And now I was gathering enough to light an empire. Because the next time my parents mocked me, I would not just endure it, I would be ready. With evidence in one hand and a growing plan in the other, I was preparing for the moment when the laughter would finally turn against them. The more I gathered, the more I realized I could not do it all alone. Humiliation had given me fire, and evidence had given me strength, but what I needed now was reach. My system worked for me, but if it was going to become something bigger, something strong enough to silence my parents' voices forever, I would need allies. The first person I turned to was Maya, a colleague from my marketing firm. She was sharp, practical, and never afraid to speak her mind. For months, I had kept my late-night project a secret, but one morning, after another condescending call from my father, I walked into the office with determination. "Maya," I whispered, pulling her aside in the break room. "I need to show you something." I opened my laptop and revealed the simple website I had been building. Pages of guides, spreadsheets, coupon databases, and tips glowed on the screen. "This is what I have been doing," I said, my voice shaking. "I know it looks small, but I think it could be something more. A platform for people like me, people dismissed, overlooked, mocked. People who need tools, not judgment." Maya scrolled through the pages silently. Then she looked up, her eyes wide. "Dorothy, this is brilliant. Do you know how many people are out there trying to save, desperate for strategies, tired of being shamed for it? You could reach thousands, maybe millions." Her words lit something inside me. For the first time, someone other than me saw the potential. "I don't have money to hire developers," I admitted. "I don't have investors. I just have this idea and some evidence that saving can be power, not shame." Maya smiled. "You don't need investors yet. You need presentation. Let me help polish it. You handle the system, you're already the expert. I'll handle branding, design, messaging. Together, we can make people see what you see. That night, we stayed late in the office, the glow of our screens illuminating our tired faces. We tested layouts, crafted slogans, designed a logo. By dawn, my little coupon blog looked like the seed of a startup. But I needed more than just presentation. I needed protection. My parents had resources, connections, and influence. If they ever realized what I was building, they could try to crush it before it grew. So I called an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years, Harper, a law school graduate who now specialized in small business and intellectual property. When I told Harper my story, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then she said, "Dorothy, your parents don't own you, and they don't own your ideas. Let me help you protect this. Register it. Trademark it. Lock it down legally so no one can take it away from you." We met at a cafe the next weekend. Harper looked over my drafts and guides with the seriousness of someone reading a case file. She outlined the steps: registering the site, filing for copyright, setting up a business entity in my name alone. Her legal language was a fortress, and I realized how desperately I needed one. "Do this quietly," she advised. "Do not tell your parents. Do not tell anyone who might talk to them. Build until it is undeniable. When the time comes, your work will be too large to erase." Between Maya's design skills and Harper's legal guidance, my project transformed. What had once been scattered notes and secret spreadsheets became a real platform. We gave it a name, ThriftSmart, a place where saving was not shameful but powerful. At night, when exhaustion set in, I thought of my parents' faces. My mother's brittle laugh. My father's booming mockery. I pictured them scrolling through headlines one day, seeing my name beside numbers they could not ignore. That image fueled me through every hour of lost sleep. Elena, my younger cousin who had always looked up to me, called one evening. "Dorothy, I heard what Uncle said at the last gathering. People repeat it, you know. But I want you to know. I don't believe it. I think you're stronger than they'll ever admit." Her words made me realize something. I wasn't just building this for me. I was building it for everyone who had ever been mocked for living small, who had ever been shamed for stretching a paycheck, who had ever been told they weren't enough. And with Maya designing, Harper protecting, and Elena cheering me on, I knew I wasn't alone anymore. My parents thought they had silenced me, but together, we were preparing to give me a voice so loud it would echo far beyond their laughter. The pieces of my life no longer felt scattered. They were aligning, forming something deliberate, something sharp. What began as coupons and whispers of shame was becoming a blueprint for transformation. I knew now that if I wanted to silence my parents' cruelty, I could not simply succeed quietly. I had to succeed loudly, undeniably, on a stage so large that even they could not laugh it away. That was when the counterplan began to take shape. Maya spread sheets of paper across my dining table, sketches of logos and marketing concepts glowing with possibility. "The system works," she said, tapping the spreadsheets I had built. "We need to scale it. Start with free guides, attract attention, then build premium resources. Subscriptions, courses, partnerships. This can be more than a website, it can be a movement." Harper leaned forward, her voice measured, every word precise. "But we must protect the foundation first. I have filed the LLC in your name, Dorothy. I have registered the brand. No one can touch this without facing legal consequences. Your parents could try to intimidate you, but they cannot take ownership. It is locked." I exhaled, the weight of safety settling over me. For the first time, I felt untouchable. We created a timeline. Month 1. Launched the site with a blog and free tools. Month 2. Build social media presence, short videos, quick tips. Month 3. Release the first paid product. A budgeting course paired with real coupon strategies. Every step was designed to grow steadily but visibly. Elena, watching from the corner, spoke up. "People will connect to your story, Dorothy. Don't hide it. Tell them who you are. Tell them you were mocked, dismissed, laughed at. Show them that you turned shame into strength. They need to see not just the system but the person behind it." Her words struck me like truth I hadn't wanted to admit. For years I had hidden the pain, the laughter, the way my parents used me as their favorite joke. Now maybe exposing it could become power. We worked late into the night. Maya designed social media templates with bold, defiant fonts. Harper drafted terms and contracts to protect our content. Elena brainstormed stories that would resonate with people living paycheck to paycheck. At the center of it all sat me, Dorothy, the daughter mocked for coupons, now turning those scraps into empire. Still, I knew my parents. Their arrogance was not passive. If they caught wind of what I was building, they would try to destroy it. My father had connections in finance, my mother in social circles. They could poison reputations with a whisper. So the counterplan was not just about building. It was about timing. We need the right reveal, Maya insisted. Not a slow trickle. A moment. Something so public, so undeniable that no one, not even your parents, can laugh it away. Harper nodded. A launch event. Tie it to a milestone, like your first major partnership or financial threshold. Make it impossible to ignore. And if your parents are there, all the better. The idea grew roots in my mind. I pictured it. A stage, lights, cameras. My parents sitting in the audience, smug and certain of my smallness, only to watch the world rise to its feet for me. We circled a date. 6 months. That would give us time to build the platform, secure partnerships, generate buzz. 6 months to transform ridicule into revelation. As we wrapped up that night, I caught my reflection in the darkened window. I looked tired, older somehow, but stronger. My mother's voice echoed in memory. Imagine grown women clipping like beggars. I whispered back. Imagine grown women turning scraps into millions. But just as our counterplan solidified, a message arrived that threatened to unravel it all. An invitation from my parents to attend another grand dinner. This time they promised the whole family would be there. My chest tightened because I knew. If I went, the ridicule would return. But if I refused, they would start asking questions, and questions could destroy the secrecy we had fought so hard to keep. The invitation arrived folded in an ivory envelope, the kind my mother loved to flaunt. Gilded letters spelled out the words, "Family dinner. Formal attire required." Beneath, a handwritten note in my father's bold script. "This time, everyone important will be present." First I thought of tearing it up, but Harper cautioned me otherwise. If you decline, they'll start whispering. They'll sniff around, dig. Maybe even try to uncover what you're hiding. Right now, they think you're still their quiet daughter, humiliated and small. Keep it that way. Maya agreed. Play the part a little longer, Dorothy. Go endure their mockery one last time. Every laugh now only makes the reveal stronger later. So I went. The evening was almost identical to the last. Chandeliers blazing, crystal glasses lined in neat rows. Guests dressed in their best as though competing for attention. My mother floated through the room like a queen, pearls shimmering under the lights. My father held court near the head of the table, his booming laughter drowning softer voices. I walked in quietly, wearing a plain black dress, no jewelry except my mother's old pearls I had kept out of spite. As soon as I sat, the familiar rhythm began. Snide remarks about living small. Questions about whether I had found a real job yet. My mother smirked as she asked if I had finally retired the scissors and coupons. I smiled faintly, took a sip of water, and let them believe I was still the same daughter they could mock. But inside I counted every insult like a bead on a string. 1, 2, 3. The fire inside me grew hotter with each one. Then the pivot came. Halfway through dinner, as dessert was served, my father tapped his glass with a spoon. The room hushed. He rose, holding a piece of paper. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice rich with pride, "you all know my daughter Dorothy. She's been the subject of many of our jokes, and bless her, she still comes back smiling. Tonight, however, she's brought something more interesting than her usual cookies." My stomach twisted. He lifted the paper higher. "I found this little project she's been tinkering with. A website. Something about saving money, coupons, stretching pennies. She calls it Thrift Smart." He chuckled and the crowd chuckled with him. "Imagine. My daughter thinks she's an entrepreneur. Can you believe it?" The paper trembled in his hand, but not from nerves, from power. He had discovered me. My mother leaned over to a cousin, her voice carrying. "She thinks this little hobby makes her important. As if she could ever build something real." Laughter rolled across the table like a wave. I froze, my breath shallow. The secret I had guarded, the platform I had built in silence, was now dangling in my father's hand like a toy for his amusement. For a moment, panic clawed at me. If he mocked ThriftSmart too openly, if he spread the name as a joke, it could poison the brand before it ever grew. My months of planning could unravel. But then I looked closer. He didn't have the full picture. Just a printout of the homepage Maya and I had designed weeks ago. No data, no subscribers, no business filings. He had stumbled across a fragment, not the fortress. He thought it was laughable because he didn't know how strong it had already become. I straightened in my chair, forcing calm. "Yes, Father," I said clearly, my voice steady enough that the entire table turned to listen. "It's mine. I've been working on it for months." The room stilled, waiting for me to shrink, to deny, to play along with the joke. But I didn't. My father's smile faltered just slightly. He hadn't expected me to claim it. "Well," he said after a beat, chuckling again, "I suppose even dreams can be cute. Just don't get carried away, Dorothy. Some of us live in the real world." The laughter returned, but weaker this time, thinner, uncertain. I leaned back, folded my napkin across my lap, and smiled. Not the fragile smile of endurance, but the calm smile of a woman with secrets stronger than their laughter. Because while my father thought he had exposed me, all he had done was set the stage. Every word he spoke tonight would only sharpen the contrast when the real reveal came. But as I left the dinner that night, heart pounding, I knew one thing. The game had changed. My parents had seen the shadow of my plan, and soon they would see the full blaze. The question was no longer if I would be ready, it was whether they would survive it. 6 months felt both like a lifetime and a heartbeat. Every late night, every spreadsheet, every post and video Maya helped me polish, every legal paper Harper filed. It all built toward this moment. ThriftSmart had grown beyond anything I had imagined. What began as coupon guides became a thriving platform. Thousands subscribed to my newsletters. Sponsors reached out. A financial magazine called me the rising voice of practical wealth. And then came the call that sealed my fate. Forbes wanted to feature me in their 30 under 30 list. My name, Dorothy, in a place where my parents swore it would never belong. Maya, Harper, and Elena insisted on a launch event. "This isn't just a milestone," Maya said, her voice buzzing with excitement. "It's the reveal. The moment they'll never forget." The venue was sleek and modern, all glass walls and soft lights. 100 guests filled the space, investors, clients, journalists, young families who had found hope through my guides. The logo of ThriftSmart glowed proudly across a massive screen. Cameras flashed as I stepped onto the stage in a gown I had rented for a fraction of the cost, a quiet nod to where it all began. My heart thundered, but my voice was steady. "My name is Dorothy. Some of you know me as the founder of ThriftSmart. But what you don't know is why I built it." The room hushed. I built it because I was laughed at, mocked, told I was nothing. My own parents made me a joke at their table, called me a beggar for clipping coupons, told me I would never sit among the successful. I paused, letting the words hang heavy in the air. But every coupon was not weakness. It was strategy. Every dollar I saved was a brick in a wall. And tonight, that wall stands tall enough to be seen on the Forbes list. Applause swelled, some cheers rising from the crowd. The screen shifted, and there it was, my photo, my name, Dorothy Hayes, Forbes 30 under 30. The audience erupted. Cameras captured the moment, the flash of my smile, the tears in my eyes. But what mattered most was the sight of my parents in the front row. They had come, smug and certain they would watch another failure. My father's jaw slackened. My mother's hand gripped her pearls so tightly her knuckles whitened. Their eyes darted to each other, then back to the screen, disbelief etched into every line of their faces. I looked directly at them as I continued. To everyone who has ever been told they are small, mocked for saving, dismissed for living simply, know this: you are not weak. You are building strength. You are building freedom. You are building power that arrogance will never understand. The applause drowned my words, but my parents heard the silence that followed. The silence of a daughter who no longer needed their approval, because the world itself had given it instead. Reporters crowded the stage after, asking questions about my journey. Investors shook my hand. Young women hugged me, whispering thanks for giving them hope. And through it all, I watched my parents sink deeper into their chairs, their laughter long gone. Then, as if the night itself had chosen irony, the event host handed me a framed copy of the Forbes article. I held it high, smiling for the cameras. "This," I said, "is what comes from coupons." The crowd roared. The flashbulbs blinded. And my parents, who once mocked me for scraps of paper, now sat frozen as their daughter claimed the stage. But as the applause thundered and the cameras captured every angle, I saw my father lean to my mother and whisper something. His lips were tight, his eyes cold. They were not done with me. Their laughter had been replaced with something sharper, resentment. And I knew the fallout was coming. The applause was still ringing in my ears when I stepped off the stage, the Forbes frame heavy in my hands. For a fleeting moment I felt weightless. The fire, the humiliation, the years of silence. Tonight it all transformed into something undeniable. I was no longer the daughter mocked at the dinner table. I was Dorothy Hayes, founder of ThriftSmart, standing tall on the world stage. Then I saw my parents cutting through the crowd. Their faces were masks. My mother's lips pressed so tightly her pearls trembled on her neck. My father's smile was practiced, but his eyes were ice. They stopped just inches from me, forcing me back toward the wall of cameras. "You embarrassed us," my father said flatly. "I told the truth," I replied. He leaned closer. "That truth was not yours to share. You turned us into villains." My mother's whisper cut sharp as glass. "Do not think a list makes you more than us. This attention will pass. We do not." Before I could answer, Harper stepped in. "Calm, professional. If you have comments, send them in writing. Dorothy has no obligation to stand here and be threatened." My father chuckled darkly. "Threatened? No. Warned. You've started a fire you cannot control." He slipped a folded sheet into my hand. "A demand for retraction. Remove our names, apologize publicly, or sponsors will vanish." I slid the paper into Harper's hand without reading. "No." He leaned closer, voice dropping to a hiss. "Enjoy this night. By morning we close every door you think you opened." They walked away, collecting sympathy with nods and handshakes. Cameras swiveled back to me, hungry for reaction. I kept my smile steady though inside my chest pounded. "I built a company," I told a reporter gently. "I will keep building." But later when I reached the lobby, Maya rushed to my side, phone in hand. "Dorothy, look." On social media, a new tag trended. #CouponQueenCon. Posts claimed ThriftSmart was a scam, twisting fragments of screenshots, turning my story into a punchline all over again. Elena's face burned red. "This is them. They couldn't beat you on stage, so they're trying to drown you in lies." Harper's voice was steel. "Then we counter with facts. Verified accounts. Receipts. The truth will hold." I clutched the Forbes frame tighter. The applause of moments ago felt distant now, replaced with the familiar sting of ridicule, but this time amplified to thousands of voices. For a heartbeat, I felt like the girl with coupons at the dinner table again. Then my phone rang. A number I knew too well. I answered. My father's voice slid through like ice. "You have 1 hour to post an apology," he said, "or we will destroy everything you've built." The line went dead and I stood frozen. Victory had been mine for one night. But the real battle had only begun. Morning sunlight spilled across my apartment, but peace did not come with it. My phone buzzed relentlessly, hundreds of notifications, dozens of missed calls. My name was everywhere. The headlines were split like glass. Half of them praised me. "Dorothy Hayes turns coupons into empire. Founder of ThriftSmart inspires millions with story of resilience." The other half carried poison. "Ungrateful daughter shames parents. Coupon queen a fraud?" I sat at the table, coffee cooling in my hands, scrolling. The tag #CouponQueenCon still trended, but beside it rose another. #ThriftSmartTruth. People I had never met defended me. Mothers posted photos of groceries bought with coupons. Fathers wrote about saving for their children's tuition using my guides. Strangers shared screenshots of their own budgets, crediting ThriftSmart for giving them hope. For every false rumor, 10 real people stood up. Elena read aloud from her phone, her eyes glowing. "Listen to this one. I saved $300 this month because of Dorothy's system. Anyone calling her a scammer has never tried it." And another. "Her parents should be ashamed. She built what most of us only dream of." Her voice softened. "They're turning, Dorothy. The crowd is with you." Maya arrived not long after, laptop under her arm. She dropped it on the table, pulled up charts, and spun the screen toward me. Traffic doubled overnight. Subscriptions are up by 40%. The smear campaign gave you more visibility than any ad budget ever could. But then Harper entered, her expression serious. She carried a folder and her phone pressed to her ear. When she ended the call, she placed the folder before me. The payment hold is lifted. We filed proof of legitimacy, and the processor reviewed it. Funds are secure. But, she hesitated. Your parents' attorney filed a public complaint this morning. They claim defamation. I inhaled slowly, steadying my voice. They humiliated me for years. I have recordings, notes, proof. If they want a legal battle, I'll give them one. Harper nodded. And you'll win. They don't understand what you've built. This isn't just business. It's community. You have thousands of witnesses ready to testify with their stories. The thought filled me with something stronger than relief. Resolve. By afternoon, major outlets picked up the counter-narrative. A respected journalist published a piece titled, "From Mockery to Millions, The Truth About Dorothy Hayes." The article highlighted not just ThriftSmart's success, but the cruelty I had endured at home. My parents' attempt to smear me backfired. The world now judged them, not me. That evening, as the city lights flickered on, I received one final call. This time from a cousin I barely knew. Her voice was hushed, almost apologetic. "Dorothy, your parents are furious. They said you betrayed the family name. But I just want you to know everyone's talking, and most of us think you were right to finally speak. You did what none of us dared." Her words lingered long after the call ended. I stood by the window looking out at the streets below. 6 months ago, I had been a woman mocked for cookies baked with coupons. Now I was a name on Forbes, a founder, a leader. My parents had tried to bury me, but in doing so, they gave me the stage to rise higher than they ever imagined. And yet, I knew this was not the end. They had lost control, but pride is a stubborn enemy. My father's voice still echoed. "By morning, you will understand what power is." The morning had come, and power was mine. But the final word had not yet been spoken. Because tomorrow, I would stand in front of the cameras again. Not as a daughter fighting humiliation, but as Dorothy Hayes, the woman who turned laughter into fire and fire into victory. And the world would hear my lesson. The room was so still you could hear the click of cameras before the flashes blinded. Journalists leaned forward in their seats. Notebooks open, recorders poised. For the first time in my life, the silence around me was not humiliation, it was respect. I stood at the microphone in the plain black dress I had worn to my parents' dinner, the very one they once dismissed as too simple. Around my neck hung the pearl earrings I had inherited, the same ones I had touched in moments of despair. Tonight, they gleamed under the lights as though they too had waited for this moment. "My name is Dorothy Hayes," I began, letting the syllables linger. "You've read stories about me. Some painted me as an opportunist, others as a fraud. But tonight I want you to hear the truth. Not the gossip, not the spin, just the truth." Pen scratched. Cameras zoomed. I was mocked for saving. My parents laughed when I clipped coupons. They told me I would never rise above scraps. They turned my frugality into a dinner joke, my silence into entertainment. And for years I believed them. I thought small meant weak. I inhaled slowly, steadying my voice. But small was never weak. Small was smart. Every coupon was not failure, it was a seed. Every saved dollar was a brick. Every night at my kitchen table, alone with my spreadsheets, was another step up a ladder they said didn't exist. And today that ladder led me here. The screen behind me lit up with the image from Forbes. My name on the 30 under 30 list. The audience erupted. Applause thundered, cameras flashed, and for a moment I let the sound wash over me like a tide. I raised my hand gently, and the room stilled again. This is not just about me. It is about everyone who has ever been humiliated for living simply, for dreaming quietly, for stretching a paycheck while others mock them. This is about turning humiliation into fuel, silence into strategy, fire into triumph. A journalist stood. "Dorothy, do you have anything to say to your parents tonight?" The room held its breath. I met the camera lens head-on. "I wish them peace," I said. "But I will never again seek their approval." I don't need their laughter. I don't need their permission. I built something without them, and I will keep building long after their voices fade. A murmur rippled through the hall, some nods, some soft applause. Another journalist called out, "What lesson do you want people to take from your journey?" I smiled, small but certain. That when someone underestimates you, you hold more power than you think. Because they are not watching. They are not guarding. And in the silence where they think you are broken, you are free to rise higher than they ever dreamed. The applause this time did not stop. It rolled through the room, steady and rising, until it felt like the walls themselves shook. Afterward, Maya embraced me backstage, tears streaking her cheeks. "Do you realize what you just did? You didn't just defend yourself. You gave everyone permission to fight back against shame." Harper handed me a signed copy of the processor's final clearance notice. "Your parents' complaints are dismissed. They overplayed their hand. Legally, you are untouchable." And Elena, dear Elena, squeezed my hands tight. "You aren't just my cousin anymore. You're my hero. Do you know how many people in our family whispered that you'd never make it? You proved them wrong for all of us." Their words wrapped around me like armor. For the first time, I felt not just victorious but whole. That night, when I returned to my small apartment, I carried the framed Forbes article with me. I placed it on the wall above the kitchen table, the same table where coupons once sat in uneven piles, where tears once stained the wood. I traced my fingers along the frame, remembering every insult, every brittle laugh, every time I wanted to give up. I sat in silence, letting the city hum outside my window. I whispered to myself, "They called me nothing, but I became everything they feared." And I knew deep in my bones this was not just my victory. It was a beacon for anyone still sitting at their own table, clutching scraps and wondering if they mattered. This was my story. If you have ever been mocked, humiliated, or betrayed, do not let it break you. Let it sharpen you. Let their laughter become your blueprint. Rise so high that the ones who doubted you cannot reach. Subscribe for more stories of betrayal turned into strength, humiliation forged into triumph, and revenge that restores dignity. Because silence does not mean weakness. It means the storm is coming.